Happy holidays. Welcome to Energy Thinks, a podcast about the oil and gas industry's role in the energy future. I'm Tisha Schuler, your host and the CEO of Adamantine Energy. Many of you know through the holidays, whenever there's a little break, I'm doing a rerun of one of our most popular or impactful episodes from this year. And today I have a really fun one for you. So we're heading into the week that includes many holidays, including Christmas. And I am delighted to share my conversation with Chad Zamarin, CEO of Williams. The first time around this episode, he was like 1 week into his new job, and yet as clear-headed and thoughtful as ever about the opportunities that face our industry in the moment. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation, whatever you're doing this week, traveling, enjoying family, sitting around with your feet up. I hope you have some time to reflect and experience gratitude for the many gifts that we all have. And I want to wish you and yours warm holidays from all of us here at Adamantine. Now here's my conversation with Chad Zamarin. Chad Zamarin, thank you so much for joining me again on the Energy Thinks podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I interviewed you for my last book, Real Decarbonization, and I had the pleasure of interviewing you again for this one, The Myth and the Moment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into that, congrats on your new role. When I last interviewed you, the most memorable thing you told me is that you were thinking about 100 years of history with Williams and the next 100 years. Well, now you're charged with the next 100 years. So how are you thinking about that in this new role?
Yeah, that's probably what I think is the most rewarding part of working at Williams. We have this great, rich history as a company, now over 115 years old as a company, but also evolving constantly over the course of our history. And, I hope poised to be a leader in kind of the next generation of energy and infrastructure. And so we've done a lot of great work. Alan and I worked really closely together. The leadership team has been together now, changing a bit, but the nucleus has been strong for the last almost decade. And the great news is we're really not just poised to capture the here and now and deliver solutions that matter today, but we are spending our time focused on how do we make sure the company is positioned to be a solution provider for the next generation and for the next 100 years of operations. We do have that unique DNA of being able to think long. It's hard when you're a public company. You're constantly focused on the next earnings release and you're pushed into this very kind of real-time focus as a company. But we really do try to take the time to understand the fundamentals of energy, try to plan strategies that align with those fundamentals, and then position ourselves to be looking around the corner, ready for what's coming next, and be not just a leader in this moment in time, but be a leader for generations to come. And so if I and my team do our jobs well, we'll leave our time focused on the future, making sure that the company is well positioned for the next generation, not just accomplishing things we need to accomplish during our time, but making sure we position the company for the next generation of success.
And it is wild to think about. It's wild to think about energy over just the course of our careers, 20, 30-ish years. But to think back 100 years, how much it's changed, and to imagine what could happen in the next decade, in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years, it's truly extraordinary. And yet here we find ourselves at this weird moment. I think it's a generational moment. I gave you an advanced copy of my book, The Myth and the Moment, and I'd love to get your take. What was your reaction on this idea that we are at an unusual crossroads in the energy, climate, future conversation?
Yeah, first, what I would say is you are so funny. I love reading your books. And I even just love the first story where you talk about the dinner party that you're at. And it really kind of shows the challenge that we have. People that we're friends with, people that we love and we care about, and we have so much in common with, but in some of the basic fundamentals of our business, there's such a vast difference of understanding and appreciation for these issues. And when at times you have to sit at a dinner table and be careful about what you say because you're worried about people, and their impressions about the work that you do, because of the myth, because of this idea that there is an easier solution, there is a better solution, and it's free or cheap and it's easy. Like that is the myth that unfortunately is a dream that we all want to believe in. Like I'd love for that to be reality, but it is unfortunately not that easy. It's not free. It's not cheap. These are complex problems. And so what I really love about the book and what you do is bridge those worlds and bring those together to recognize that unfortunately the things that we might hear on the news or that we've been able to kind of convince ourselves might be true may not be as simple as we hoped or wished they would be. But that doesn't mean that we have to give up. There can be a bridge to a solution, but we've got to bring these worlds together. We've got to bring the worlds of energy and existing energy companies, existing energy solutions together with the hopes and the dreams of what we want to accomplish long term. And so what I liked about the book is that you're not speaking to one audience. You really are trying to recognize those two different kind of constituencies, recognize that they're our friends, they're our family, they're the people that we live with, they're our customers, they're our employees. How do we make sure that we're bringing together that middle pragmatism between what we may know to be true, but is at odds with what we hope to be true? And so how do we bring that together? I think your book does a great job of really being a roadmap for how to get the pragmatists to the table and hopefully how to make those of us that live in those extreme positions to be more pragmatic, because we've got to make sure we're bringing that together. And so, I thought it was great. And I think recommend anybody who's interested in energy and frankly, culture and bringing people together to solve complex problems. Like it's a great roadmap.
Oh, thank you. At first, it was just called The Moment. And it really came together when I was thinking about those stories, Chad. So I'm glad that they were compelling for you, because I wondered, why do I find myself in these situations where I'm so tense, so like on alert? And it is because you're with your friends and you're just having a normal conversation. Then all of a sudden you're the bad guy and you wonder, like, how did this happen? But the idea of the myth of an easy energy transition was so powerful for me, because it's kind of like, we like to, occasionally joke about unicorn farts and rainbows powering the future. But actually the myth is compelling because it is kind of magical, right? Because there is this sort of otherworldly quality to it. And when we understand that, I think it gives us a little more, I don't know if it's like empathy or groundedness to work with our climate-centric stakeholders. But the one thing I'm curious about what you're seeing out in the world is it feels to me like everywhere I look, the myth is falling apart. People are still holding on to it. In fact, they may even hold on to it tighter because it's falling apart. But when you see in places like California, where they're essentially trying to ask their refiners to stay, where they're suddenly articulating the importance of drilling for oil in the state of California, when you see things like that, you start going, okay, people who are charged with implementing net zero or 100% renewable, whatever their commitments were, their decarbonization commitments, are now recognizing how hard this is.
Yeah.
It feels to me like the myth is unraveling, which doesn't make it easy. It doesn't mean like instantly we are welcomed to the party. But do you also see that? Do you see among your climate-centric stakeholders a recognition that this energy transition thing was going to be harder than we thought?
Yeah, certainly. And frankly, we've seen it across our entire footprint. We operate across virtually the entire United States. And we've been seeing it for years. We've been actually trying to advocate for a recognition that things are going to get more challenging and not easier, as kind of we I think have been led to believe they might be. We've seen increasing utility prices across our entire footprint, not just in California and New York. We've seen increased volatility and a lessening of reliability. We talk about the fact that, yes, we've been rapidly increasing the deployment of renewables, but those are intermittent resources. And at the same time, we have not been investing in the baseload energy systems that you have to dispatch to meet and support that intermittency. And so it's like adding cars to the highways, but we're not expanding the lanes. And so when that happens, you get congestion pricing, you get accidents, you get traffic jams. And that's what we've seen coming when we're building up this one resource that is intermittent and requires dispatchable energy. At the same time, we're not investing in fact, we're taking away dispatchable energy. And so we've seen this challenge emerging. And the good news is people are recognizing it. We will see, unfortunately, through the hard way, we'll see some of the high utility bill increases year over year this year as we've seen in the last 20 years in the United States. Like that is something that starts to affect people and their day-to-day lives. And so we've been investing literally trillions of dollars into new energy resources, but we haven't been increasing energy demand in the United States. It's a pretty simple equation. When you were told that, hey, these are cheaper, it almost sounded like this was free energy. Well, when you're investing trillions of dollars in infrastructure and you're not increasing demand, costs are going to go up. And so we've seen, I think, this playing out now across the board. And so even places like New England, one of the real challenges you're seeing, one of the great stories of the United States is even with the increase in costs that we're starting to see come to light, we're still one of the lowest cost energy markets in the world. And so we are seeing additional reshoring and industrial demand come back to the US. We're seeing the opportunity for data centers and artificial intelligence, but we're also seeing that play out regionally. We're not seeing those investments in parts of the country where energy is more expensive. And so we're starting to see the New England states, the Western states that were very resistant to traditional energy resources. We're starting to see them realize that they're going to miss out on this next generation of investment if they don't solve their energy affordability issues. And the myth is unraveling. Like you can't solve those with intermittent renewables alone. You've got to leverage the technologies that we know can ensure reliability and affordability alongside those clean next generation technologies.
Because Williams is headquartered in Tulsa, I forget how much of your operations is in blue states, places where the myth is up until recently alive and well, in many pockets alive and well. And I think it's interesting what you're conveying here, which is those traditionally blue states or kind of climate first jurisdictions, they also have a generational opportunity to build out the next energy system, right? With this increasing power demand on many fronts, we could do it right? We could do it in a way that's durable, reliable, affordable, and decarbonizing.
Right.
But it means we have to let go of this idea that there's good solutions and bad solutions and really move to a genuine all of the above. As you're finding yourself in this moment where we have huge growing energy needs and an unraveling of the myth of an easy energy transition, how are you changing how you engage with your climate-centric stakeholders? You're in all these blue jurisdictions. What's effective in the way you talk about this? Do you have to still put your climate ambitions front and center? What works now? How are you evolving the way you're thinking and engaging?
Yeah, the first thing I would always recommend is that, again, I mentioned at the beginning, one of the beauties of a company like ours is we're focused on long-term sustainable strategy. And so you don't want to have a strategy that is shifting with election cycles or with kind of the current mood of any constituency. You want to make sure you're grounded in fundamentals and you're focused on a long-term strategy. So we are not letting up on our commitment to both bring the here and now capabilities that we have, but we're very focused on energy affordability, energy reliability, and decarbonization. And we're not going to let up, but we also are going to make sure we constantly keep those three factors in balance. You can't just pick one, because you might sacrifice the others. And so you've got to keep those in balance and find the best solutions that can create that balance of affordability, reliability, and clean, low carbon decarbonization. So I think you can be unapologetic about a strategy like that is very future focused and long term. I think you have to meet people where they are. I've said this all the time, like a climate activist doesn't care more about their children than I care about mine. Mm-hmm. Like we actually share the same goals. Like we want to create a better world. We want to create the best world possible for the people that we care about. And so I think at the end of the day, when you can talk to people in a way where you recognize that you share a common intent, but you've got different ideas on how to achieve the outcome, I think you can have a constructive conversation. And so that's where we're focused on making sure we're articulating consistency in a sustainable strategy. I will say, you mentioned there are states that frankly need help. New York is a great state. We operate in New York. We're a very large provider of natural gas to the state of New York. But if you look at New York, it's been a very difficult place to do business for the last 10 years. We've invested in a couple of projects that were killed for political reasons, not from a merit perspective. They actually would have lowered emissions and lowered costs in the state of New York, but it was a political kind of football. But New York is now struggling with the fact that companies like ours aren't building infrastructure there. They have $100 billion opportunity with a chip manufacturing facility that they can't figure out how to power. They can't figure out how to get water to the facility. So that kind of investment is at risk. You're not going to attract these next generation opportunities if you don't have a robust, reliable, affordable energy ecosystem. And so, I do think that creates the moment, the opportunity. But the best thing that we can do is just continue to have those conversations, be unapologetic in our view on how we are bringing smart, good, long-term sustainable solutions.
That New York example is such a perfect example of the moment. There's this window of opportunity where we can forge a new shared understanding. Those of us in the industry might say that we were here all along, but we have an opportunity to articulate it perhaps as a new shared understanding because of these new demands and also frankly, some of the failures of the promises of the easy energy transition. There's a space for us to move into that. So when you think about the example you gave in New York, what's the greatest opportunity ahead for the industry, for Williams? Do you think it's the way we move into this space? Is it the way we change our relationship with our climate-centric stakeholders? What should we be working to seize as the industry at this moment that I think is really, really unique?
I think of it right now in kind of two facets. One, I think we've got to stay committed to doing things the right way and being a part of a long-term sustainable solution. And for us, that's continuing to decarbonize the existing energy systems. Like that is our lowest hanging fruit. These are large energy systems. And if we can get methane emissions out of the natural gas value chain, then we can focus on using natural gas to drive down emissions by displacing high emissions fuels. And also we can bring affordability and reliability to energy systems. Like we've got to stay committed to the here and now capabilities that we have, but also do it in an increasingly more sustainable way. But also it's time to kind of re-energize the country and every stakeholder around the opportunity that we have. Artificial intelligence is an incredible opportunity, but this is like something that I've been very focused on. Over the last 25 years, the United States has barely grown electricity production. In 2000, we were the world's leading manufacturer. Today, in 2025, we haven't grown electricity production, and China has become by far the most dominant manufacturer on the planet. We've been sitting on the couch while China has taken their electricity production and increased it tenfold in the last 25 years. We've been sitting on the couch. They've been in the gym pumping iron, like hardcore. Like we've been on the couch eating donuts. They've been in the gym pumping iron. And we think that we're going to get off the couch and go win the race for AI. Like we better get off the couch. And so we've got to do it in a sustainable way, but we've got to get excited, but also urgent about the fact that we've not been building in the United States. Frankly, we outsourced it for the last 25 years. And now the next generation race is on for the future of technology. And we've got to make sure that we can compete. And so I'm trying to kind of rationalize two different issues, right? We've got to stay committed to the long-term sustainable energy strategy, but we also can't miss out on the opportunity that we have to lead the world in this next generation of technology. And so that gets me very excited, continuing to grow the energy exports and solutions that we have in the United States for the rest of the world, but also now really leaning in on leading the race for this next generation technology, which at the end of the day is an energy challenge. It is the conversion of energy into intelligence. And how do we make sure that the United States is the world's leader is going to be our next great opportunity.
There's a lot to love about your gym metaphor, including the fact that it's not competitive in the sense that us getting to the gym, like we all, like America needs to get to the gym, not just the natural gas industry, right? Like we all need to get to the gym. Last week, I was briefing a center left group on why climate hawks should support natural gas. And the biggest concern was that it would displace other lower carbon power resources, right? Whether wind or solar or nuclear or you name it. And the wonders of, I think the energy dominance agenda is that it really is truly all of the above. And there's more work to be done than there are people and companies to do it. And I think we really do need to get after it. So I love that metaphor. So let me ask you, one of the things I caution against in the book is what I call the temptation. There is a moment in this political environment with the myth of an easy energy transition unraveling and the very real competition for power manufacturing resources. There is a temptation in the oil and gas industry to brush off our historic critics and just say, we won. I told you so. I told you were going to need us. I argue against that. But even I, as you probably noticed in the book, succumb once in a while to a cranky temptation.
Yeah.
Are you ever tempted to just say, like, enough blabbering about this stuff? Like, just get out of our way and let us build. How do you manage the temptation in your life, Chad?
Yeah, it's a challenge. But what I will say is, again, my experience, because we do operate like you do in Colorado in a large way, and that's become a much different place from just a conversation perspective and the need to understand people's different perspectives. But the good news is my experience is that there's only a very far fringe where you can't have a constructive conversation. And so rather than saying kind of, I told you so and rubbing someone's face in it, we've been trying to build coalitions for the last 5 to 10 years, and it's been difficult. So maybe the moment just allows us to expand the coalition. So instead of trying to say, I told you so, I think the capturing of the moment is fighting back that temptation, but using this as an opportunity to say, look, we actually do have more in common than you might have been led to believe. And how do we actually help show that we're part of the solution? It's not maybe the myth. It's not the simple solution that you were led to believe exists. But you made the example, like when we're not supporting the growth in natural gas infrastructure in the United States, you know what's happening today? We're growing demand so rapidly with AI that we're going to leave coal plants online longer, and we're not going to displace those. We still, just along our footprint, we know that natural gas displacing coal was the greatest decarbonization solution we had in the United States over the last 15 years. Like, that is a fact. It's not a theory. That's what led to the most significant reduction in emissions in the United States, which was the leader in reducing emissions in the world. We still operate, just along our pipeline's footprint, enough coal plants that if we converted them to natural gas, it'd be equivalent to taking 85 million cars off the road each and every day. Like 85 million cars off the road each and every day. Like, we know how to do this, but we're still operating coal plants here in the United States. And the more we don't support solutions like natural gas that can provide here and now, the longer we're actually leaving coal plants in the United States operating that would switch. And so those are the challenges. And by the way, China will burn 17 times the amount of coal this year that we'll burn in the United States. So this is a global challenge that we've got to continue to educate people on. And maybe instead of rubbing people's nose in it, maybe the moment allows us to get a few more of those folks to say, okay, it's not as easy as I was led to believe. And there is a solution that is a bit more, unfortunately, complex, but leverages some of these solutions like natural gas infrastructure, and we can work together on these.
I like the way you're articulating that, because really you're describing in some ways, even if you want to say we won, you're being a generous winner, right?
Yeah.
Like, we won, and we're going to help you achieve your interests and goals.
I'm being a part of the winning team, Yeah.
It's not too late. But so there is a generosity of spirit required. But on the other hand, it is easier to be a generous winner than a generous loser. And we do have a lot of momentum in our favor. One of the ways I think this could all play out is if we see this moment as a particular political moment and the pendulum swings back, many climate hawks, I think, could go one of two ways. One, they could say, what's everything we could get accomplished around decarbonization in this window? Those will be the pragmatists, right? Those are the folks we want to create a bigger and bigger tent for, because I think our industry is increasingly pragmatic about the needs to decarbonize. And a lot of climate hawks are just saying, what can I get done right now? And your coal example is great. I think everyone can unite around growing the energy system without growing coal at this moment. But there's another possibility, which is that the myth comes back stronger, but for the politics of this moment, easy energy transition would have happened. Yeah. And there's almost like a doubling down. And you can start to see that in corners of some of the more progressive Democratic Party, where they're really saying more wind, more solar, more renewables. And I'm interested in figuring out, what's a way we can contribute to that growth of the pragmatists? Can you foresee a day, Chad, where oil and gas isn't the villain of choice for the climate movement? And what would that take? What would that require of us? How could we participate in changing that narrative? So there's no more Muppet movie oil and gas villain. That's my career goal. I will retire when there's no more Muppet movie oil and gas villains. What do you think we need to do, Chad?
Yeah, look, I hope it's happening. I do think you've got voices and leaders across our industry that are going to be a part of the future, whether that's traditional oil and gas or helping to explore the next generation of technologies. And at the end of the day, these are the companies that have created the solutions that have brought us to this kind of level of prosperity and quality of life that we have today. These companies need to be the same companies that help lead us into the future. I mean, I've always said it's an impossible strategy to think you're going to end this industry and create a whole new industry. I've said it, I think, in every talk I've given. It'd be like tearing up all the roads and replacing them for electric vehicles. Like, you're not going to do that. You're going to have to leverage the existing infrastructure, the existing companies that we have. Not all of them are going to figure it out. You are going to see those that I think can figure out how to evolve. And we talk about that a lot, as I mentioned at Williams. Like, we've had to evolve many times through the history of the company. I think we've got to keep educating people on the fact that we are intending to be the companies that help evolve us through this challenge of solving one of our generation's greatest challenges, which is how do we increase the delivery of energy around the world, but do it in a way that is decarbonizing and lowering emissions. Like, that is the long-term goal. It should be for any energy company. It's just the path to get there may not be the path that we thought of when the myth was being kind of promoted out there. And so I do think that there's a way to kind of lift up the leadership around, again, a long-term sustainable strategy. The worst thing that we can do is say, okay, new administration, a new moment in kind of mood around the country. So we're going to swing the strategy this direction now. We're going to go totally. We've got to have a long-term strategy that is sustainable, that allows us to have credible conversations even through volatile times. And that way, if things swing back, you've still got a very pragmatic, I think, well-grounded approach. I will say, one of the things that is unique to this time, and we were seeing this kind of shift happen even before the latest Trump administration came into office, the cost of energy is something that is now going to have a greater impact on people. And we've actually invested in a lot of that infrastructure through deficit, federal spending and tax credit. That ability to increase costs, that's going to start showing up more and more at the utility bill level. And so I think that's going to keep pressure on the fact to find solutions that balance not just kind of the myth of a cheap, easy, carbon-free energy, balanced though with we need affordability, we need reliability. So we can't give up on balancing both of those or we're going to lose credibility. And so I think that's got to be the goal.
Well, I like where you started this conversation, which is this idea of an ever-changing world, an ever-changing company. And I'm imagining, even as our industry has to evolve to meet the energy challenges of today, the ones we anticipate in the future, I'd like to imagine that the climate hawk world, the world of our stakeholders, is also evolving, and that we're all moving toward this increasingly shared vision where we just don't have time for nonsense. We don't have time for villains. We don't have time for dickering over this or that, when we just need to be building energy so that it is always on, affordable, and empowering the transformation of communities and our country for the better. So I love what you're evoking here. And you're right, the sort of durable thinking about the future is a way to ensure that we don't get caught up in the political battles of today and the pendulum swings that are happening here and there. So, Chad, I'd love to ask you the final question I ask all my guests. What are you most optimistic about?
Yeah, that's pretty easy for me. I am really excited about the talent that we're seeing come into the company. I hope to the broader industry. Again, one of the reasons why it's funny, I'm often asked, what keeps me up at night from a company perspective. You might think, project or the operations of a certain asset. And what really keeps me up at night, I would hope this is something on the minds of all leaders across our spaces. One, are we going to be a company that is relevant for now, but also for the long term? And are we going to be a place that people are proud to work at? And that's not always a given, because of these polar kind of views on what is the right thing to do. And so making sure that we have a strategy that's going to be relevant for a long time, for generations to come, and also making sure that people would be proud to come to work at our company. And what I'm most optimistic about is that as we've been really focused on building a sustainable strategy, also building a place where we want people to feel like we're solving real problems. There's real purpose in the work that we do. People can be proud to come to work at Williams. I think that that's seeing the talent that we're attracting in this next generation and rallying the talent, which is why, again, the moment needs to be about bringing people together to solve all of this is not just the company's greatest challenge. This is our generation's greatest challenge, but also opportunity. And so how are we bringing the talent together that is going to work on some of the most amazing things for the next generation? That's pretty exciting. I mean, we are seeing, I think there was a moment in time where we were being painted as the villain and we were being lumped into that kind of camp. It might have been harder to attract talent, but this is why having a sustainable strategy, making sure we're not apologetic, making sure we're not hunkering down, making sure we're not swinging to one constituency, but creating something that gets everyone excited about the future. Man, I get to meet with a lot of our interns, our early career talent, even what I'm seeing kind of emerge through the leadership ranks of the company. There's a lot of excitement about taking on pretty big, tough challenges, sometimes not always being thanked for the work that you do. But I'm really hopeful and optimistic that the team is fired up and we're going to continue to attract the kind of team members that are really excited about getting out of bed every day and getting off the couch, getting in the game and solving big problems. And so that's got me very optimistic.
Chad, I do think you are a generational leader for this moment. And I want to thank you for joining me on the Energy Thinks podcast and tell you that get your ass into the gym.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
All right. Thanks.
That's our episode for today. Thanks so much to you, my listeners, for your continued engagement and excuse to have such great interviews. And thanks to Chad for joining me his first month on the new job. I really found this idea compelling of taking the moment and making sure that we're building bigger, broader coalitions. That's how we're going to create that kind of durability of our efforts. And I am obsessed, as you have heard and will continue to hear, with what a world looks like where oil and gas is recognized as a partner and not only identified with as a villain. I think that's going to be really important. If you like what you're hearing, please take a moment and rate and review Energy Thinks wherever you get your podcast. It helps more people in the oil and gas industry find us. If you'd like to know more about our work at Adamantine, please check out energythinks.com. And while you're there, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true. I'd like to thank my colleague, Kayla Chives, for making All Things Podcast possible. Until next time, I'm Tisha Schuler, wishing you and yours happiness, prosperity, and good health.